ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Citizen A, where we wrap the week's current affairs with the best political team on television from a very Auckland perspective. Warning, we're as fair and balanced as Fox News. Joining me tonight, I'm a revolving panel of bloggers and Auckland opinion shapers. He runs the best independent news site in New Zealand, constantly holding the powerful to account in a way we can only dream TVNZ would. He is known as the thinking woman's bitter crumpet, editor of scoop.co.nz, the ever-brilliant Selwyn Manning. And he is to rational debate what drinking is to driving, tax redistribution is like kryptonite to him, the unsuppressible Darth Vader of the right-wing blogosphere, Cameron Slater, aka Royal Oil. Welcome to you both. Coming up tonight, Issue 1. Official Information Act emails between Peter Jackson and Jerry Brownlee clearly state the actors' boycott wasn't the reason Warner Brothers were threatening removal of The Hobbit. How easily led are people by a manufactured crisis? Issue 2, WikiLeaks Orama. Did we go to war for Fonterra? Did Murray McCully lie to Parliament over meeting the Dalai Lama? And how good is the free trade deal with America that John Key claimed would be worth billions? Issue 3 tonight, Len Brown and his anonymous donors. Is Len Brown looking after Auckland's interests or wealthy Aucklanders' interests? And why can't Auckland save historic sites? And we'll end the show on a final word. But let's kick things off with Issue 1. So emails show Peter Jackson lied about the actors' union boycott taking The Hobbit overseas, and the entire thing was a manufactured crisis so Warner Brothers could screw more money from a Prime Minister who played political games to maximise damage to the union. Selwyn, the Warner Brothers executives laughed long and hard all the way back to Hollywood, didn't they? New Zealand was taken for a ride, weren't we? This wasn't about the actors' union boycott at all.
I think all the indications are that it was a Warner Brothers organised strategy here. You saw it rolled out in perfect timing. You stimulate a response from the actors' union. You then chip away at that union. You actually try to sow into the public psyche that the union is not really representing anyone except some sort of elitist kind of
and
idea.
the CTU fell right into that.
Well, hold on, we'll get into that in a second.
Then you start to see, now we have evidence where Peter Jackson, and you've got to say, during that whole period, he did not look like a man in control. No. That's why I suspect that, you know, we clearly see now that the ones pulling the strings
were Warner Brothers
from overseas.
Well, you haven't seen the whole email.
They create the situation here, they create destabilising kind of factors in the whole industry, and then they move silently on the government saying, all we want here is a stable employment environment. Yeah. The two are linked, but it was manufactured. I think you're absolutely right, Martyn.
Cam, how can your good friend John Key keep up this pretense of a great deal maker when he sided with Warner Brothers right from the start for political gain, meaning there was nothing else he could do or say once they were in the room other than how much? He didn't play for the amount of money we spent, he didn't play it very well, did he?
Well, you say the Warners were smirking all the way back on the flight. Not nearly as much as Toll New Zealand officials were smirking when Michael Cullen wrote them a cheque for $1 billion. Put it in perspective.
Not as much of a smirk. A little bit of a smirk.
Is that a justification for all of this?
I'm not justifying anything other than we've got The Hobbit here, we're making the movies.
Come on, this was manufactured, wasn't it?
Sure it was.
Right.
Manufactured to maximise profit.
Isn't the whole world about maximising profit?
At the expense of New Zealanders.
Yeah.
Well, not really.
They bought the policy, didn't they? They bought legislation that was rammed through immediately for them.
Well, I mean, at least we know about it, and it's up front. It's not like Len Brown's emails, which we'll talk about later.
We'll talk about that later. But Peter Jackson has been caught out not being upfront with the public.
I don't know if we've seen the full context of the comments. It is certainly you've got an email on one date and another one on another, but you haven't.
Clearly in that email, doesn't
the unions say clearly in the email that this sentence and this sentence are at odds with each other without seeing the full context of the emails.
The New Zealand Herald have seen the full context.
The New Zealand Herald took this article straight from the OIAs and didn't acknowledge their sources, and this is another issue that I've got to...
But I think, you know, there is obviously a timeline plan that was worked here.
Oh, for sure.
And the issue is the gullibility.
The CTU
of
was
all
trying
of
it on as well. They had a timeline and a plan.
And the other thing, we cannot let the cabinet off the hook on this one. You cannot let Brownlee and Key off the hook on this one. They were a part of manufacturing this.
Go back to your intro, though, and you're saying, are people easily manipulated by manufactured crises? And the answer to that is yes.
Like the manufactured crisis of the ACC.
Well, there is no crisis in ACC because the government had to pour $1 billion into it that Labor didn't declare.
But there's a factor here too that these people in cabinet have a title honourable, and when they're actually not practicing honourable kind of practice here, I think
you're not going to get me supporting that honourable.
No.
But if you look back on manufactured crisis, if that was your intro. Let's talk about that. New Zealand was shocked and horrified and outraged and wailing and gnashing and over the tragic deaths of 29 miners. That whole issue was completely manufactured by the media, who were hoping for a mine rescue, survivors underground, But
there's a common denominator here, Jerry Brownlee on both of these counts.
Jerry Brownlee on both counts. Okay, Selwyn, Helen Kelly's Facebook yesterday said, Wingnut Studios have put out a press release that confirms the agenda of Warner's and the law change was to deny film workers the right to be unionised. The government was trying to effectively remove the international rights to freedom of association at the behest of a multinational company rather than clarifying the law. Is it really as base as that?
I think, that from what we're seeing, that's probably getting to a fair representation of the facts here, as we know it. But I think, too, that what is wrong with our elected leaders actually being upfront and honest and actually transparent about the process and about what they're actually having to do here. If they're over the barrel by Warner's in New Zealand, really needs this movie to be made here, why don't they just say, we are
welfare,
in this,
isn't it?
And the New Zealand public is mature and intellectual enough to be able to understand and follow these issues instead of being treated like a bunch of
Helen Kelly is a little bit disingenuous talking about she's
a great woman, that Helen Kelly. You know it.
Talking about freedom of association. This is a union that supported compulsory unionism until it was taken away.
That's a righteous thing.
They took
we all
away.
Agree with that.
They didn't want freedom of association. They want freedom of association to be in the
union.
union.
But all of that does not excuse.
Yeah, that doesn't excuse.
Cabinet actually handling this in the way.
But bashing unions is always
Cam, the right wing, well, let's get into that. The right wing got what they wanted out of this manufactured crisis, didn't they? The day before this went nuclear, the largest
New
union
Zealand
protest
got what it
in
wanted.
a decade.
They got a movie made here.
The largest union protest in a decade had occurred, and this effectively cut off any media oxygen to the legitimate concerns against the 90-day right to sack and the anti-union laws, didn't it? It shut that down.
No.
What do you mean it didn't shut that down?
Most people
you had 26,000 people on the street on the Monday. This manufactured crisis erupts. Those issues got completely dumped for all of the, they're taking the Hobbit, they're taking the Hobbit crap.
Was that the government who did that, or the media who ramped it up?
Well, we see the government were told that it wasn't the boycott, but they then go out and say it was.
The whole thing is that what this is all about is corporate welfare for a small group of people in Wellington who own a large chunk of land.
Yep.
That's what it is.
And they manipulated everyone into believing it. It was about the union boycott.
I don't think the government manipulated anybody into believing it. You can't manipulate Facebook. You can't manipulate thousands and thousands of people saying we've got to save the Hobbit. Who manipulated that? Was there, where's all of the secret government documents saying, I know, we'll create a Facebook group, save the Hobbit?
In that period before Jerry Brownlee knowing what the score was via emails from Peter Jackson
you're
and actually
Jerry with actually knowing something there. Come on, that doesn't
he is there
stand up.
actually attacking the heart of the first part of the strategy. I mean, in some countries you'd be saying how much was the bung in the back pocket that the guy was receiving. In New Zealand we kind of satisfy ourselves that we don't have that level of corruption, but certainly the actions are appallingly there.
Okay, to both of you.
The only strategy that Jerry Brownlee has is how to get all the pies.
To both of you. Does Peter Jackson deserve an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor in a corporate negotiating tactic? Does he?
Yes, he does. I really like that tearful, sop. It was on Campbell or something.
Yeah,
he was sitting there almost wiping the tears from his eyes. I'm going to lose my corporate jet.
But I think it's the only time I've seen Jerry Brownlee fall out of character of trying to be like Henry VIII.
Selwyn, who wins, who loses by this manufactured crisis of the Hobbit? Now we know that it was manufactured. Who wins, who loses?
Well, I suppose the thing's been moved. It's been cemented here to be, production's going to take place here. That's a bit of a win, but for goodness sake, let's be honest and upfront about how we got there and along the way.
Yeah, it's pretty dirty. Who wins, who loses by the manufactured crisis? Well, the right wing won. They smashed the unions, didn't they?
Well, it's always good to smash the unions. I've got a lifetime exemption from being a member of a union, and Yeah, I think that's good.
I'd be shocked if any union took you as a member. I wouldn't want to be a member of that union.
The only union I'm a member of is the Compulsory Bloggers Union.
Thank you, panel. Issue 2, WikiLeaks Orama this week. Did we go to war for Fonterra? Did Murray McCully lie to Parliament over meeting the Dalai Lama? And how good is the free trade deal with America that John Key claimed would be worth billions? Here's a question to both of you. Fonterra is so powerful, they had the entire Chapter 13 of their industry's damage to the environment removed from our 10-year environmental report. American foreign policy is warped by black oil, as ours warped by white oil.
Yes.
Yeah. Honestly, Bomber, all the discussion about the so-called discussions inside Cabinet, I think are a red herring here.
Huh?
I really do. I think in the first instance, powerful media in this country should be focused on a breach of absolute monumental proportions here, where you've got cables from the United States Embassy identifying that we've got senior Ministry of Defence officials that are basically leaking cabinet information to the embassy. We have a public service that is operating as spies in this country. If this was any other mature democracy on this planet, and I say mature democracy, that would have a commission of inquiry that would be hunting out those spies. I mean, put it in another way, let's do a little comparative politics thing here. And if you had United States officials at the very senior level of its Ministry of Defence or its Department of Defence leaking to China in the modern day, or the Soviets. I mean, you'd have a Robert Hansen and an Aldrich Ames type situation of the biggest leaking kind of scandal that had occurred on the face of the planet. This is New Zealand's version of Robert Hansen.
But again, these civil servants are taking their lead from their leaders. You know, Phil Goff leaked information from a civil servant to get us to score a political point. And it's in the WikiLeaks documents.
That's all fine. Those debates should be secondary to this. Where is the State Services Commissioner Ian Rennie on this? Where is the State Services Minister Tony Ryle on this? This is at the very heart of the public service, cabinet, and a foreign power that's in New Zealand. It's a shocker.
You are trying to ascribe blame there to Tony Ryle and the State Services.
No, it's accountability of calling an inquiry to investigate this issue.
Fair enough.
It needs to be investigated.
You know the corporate New Zealand very well. They're good friends of yours. They love you dearly.
They pay shit, though.
Did we go to war in Iraq for bloody Fonterra, yes or no?
I believe we did. I believe it was a consideration. Helen Clark says no. But you know what?
We know at the time
you know
they
what
were talking about.
The joke of this is that of all of the WikiLeaks all around the world that's come out, not a single person, except for Phil Goff and Helen Clark, have denied that what's in the WikiLeaks is inaccurate. No one's ever said that except them.
And that's where an inquiry,
and Helen's been very smart about this,
would be very, very.
But Helen's been very smart about it. She says, "I don't have a recollection of that discussion," or she's using weasel words to get around it. But
where they could begin would be looking at the military, the Defence Ministry's secondment to the Beehive, to the Minister of Defence at that particular time. I'm not saying that's a passive, but that's a good place to start.
Helen Clark's chosen flunky, Marianne Thompson, right?
No, this is hard at defence.
Yes, I know it's defence, but you have to look at join the dots. Marianne Thompson was leaking to the
what's in the embassy
embassy
cables, at the very least, would be the gossip in the cabinet and the Beehive.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's very telling on the Clark era, though, isn't it?
But remember, it's senior. So secondment, you could start with that. This is going up.
Well,
okay, let's move on.
Phil Goff and Mark Burton were the defence ministers.
Okay,
in those times.
Fonterra too powerful in New Zealand? Too powerful?
Oh, absolutely. It's a strategic asset too.
I think Fonterra have got the best PR department in New Zealand. They tell the lie that they are generating so much income for New Zealanders, that farmers contribute so much. And frankly, based on information that I'm collating at the moment in terms of tax revenues and those sorts of things, it's just a lie. It's just a lie.
Okay, I'm interested to have a look at that. But move on. Next question. John Key tells the Chinese we won't meet with the Dalai Lama, while Murray McCully tells Parliament there is no boycott. Did Muzzer lie to the House, and does John Key fetch and roll over the Chinese as well?
No, he didn't lie to the House, because he was asked a question, is it a policy of the government to not meet the Dalai Lama? He was asked that specific question. You look at Hansard, is it a government policy?
You know,
And
Cam's
he
onto
said
something here.
No, it's
Cam's
not a
onto
government
something
policy.
here about questions, particularly oral questions, having to nail these guys down. There isn't any free and frank expression of what the reality is. It's a play on the words. Now, once again, is that honourable? I would suggest no.
But
So
you have to look.
it was an official policy, so it was an unofficial policy.
It wasn't an official policy.
Right.
He was asked, is it a government policy? No, it's not a government policy.
So he accurately answered. But
So
man, that's not in the spirit of, you know, of acting in
No, you're right.
I'll tell
He
you
lied,
what,
didn't he?
things are a whole lot better, you've got to admit, under Lockwood Smith than they ever were under Margaret Wilson.
You've got to shake the guy's hand on that one.
Even if he got a slapping over the expenses and tried to...
But again, you know, there's another factor lying on this. I think with the WikiLeaks cables, what we're seeing on these major issues here, rolling out over the last 2 weeks, and we've seen a desensitisation both in the public arena, the media arena, and also most significantly in the political arena. There's a desensitisation to this. If, for example, either one of those things was in its isolation as a consequence of a major media investigation, this thing would really lift the lid and probably drive major inquiries. Because we've got so many tangents to this,
I don't think the politicians...
we are in a state of feeling like you're punch drunk over where to go
I don't think the politicians have... You know, some of them have. They've understood it.
Well, it'd be good if Tony Ryle and Ian Rennie actually did something about their jobs.
But the politicians have not understood that WikiLeaks has changed forever the nature of openness of government. And we've got a minister sitting there who is busily trying to control the internet, who's trying to keep secrets, and he, you know, he's just released the law changes regarding name suppression, a whole lot of other things, and the actual law that he's released bears no resemblance to his press release, right? Right.
Well, that's politics. But
it is politics. But what I'm saying is that we've got politicians who think that this WikiLeaks thing will blow over, that you can keep secrets. Well, the world has changed.
Yeah, there's a new era here.
The world has changed.
If you look, I did the breakdown of how many cables they've released since they started releasing, and how many more they've got. This is going to take a decade.
Oh, it will take a long time.
If they're releasing at 77 a cable,
you know what I think is hilarious?
It's going to be a decade.
Is we had the Sunday Star Times send Nicky Hagar to the UK.
Good man.
He may be a good man, whatever. Trust fund baby, that's fine. He goes over there, grabs the documents. Do they release them? No. New Zealand Herald goes and gets a whole lot of documents.
Yeah,
they bring that back. Do they release them? No. But the whole concept...
But Cam, you don't know the contractual arrangements that were entered into with WikiLeaks.
Sure, but the whole idea behind WikiLeaks is that it's open and here's the information.
No. He's giving it out to everyone, but they get passwords and they're only getting a certain amount every single week.
That's why Bryce Edwards did the right thing and published a whole lot.
Oh, it's great that they're in.
Right? Okay. Brilliant work.
Moving on.
It's good to have someone break that open, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Next question. Last year, John Key told the nation that the free trade deal with America would make us billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. Yet our chief negotiator told the US we get nothing out of the deal and it will be hard to sell this nothing to New Zealand. Are we being sold magic beans by John Key?
Yeah, and you know, one of the things here that stands out in my mind is that the reliance on ideologies per se is a real folly. That, you know, what we're seeing from these cables is the true consequence of embarking on a free trade agreement with the United States. Monsanto's sensitivities, all of the pharmaceutical industries wanting open access to dump.
Who tried to dump Helen Clark?
All of these aspects are outside of an ideology. You know, many of us have been polarised or divided over, we don't like free trade because it just doesn't fit, we don't like the dumping thing. We're actually seeing from these cables real evidence of why we do not like a particular thing like this with this particular country at this particular time. Those Monsanto and the pharmaceuticals, you know, to me at the top of it.
He said this was going to get us billions last year. That's just look at our chief negotiator and tell him we're not.
I don't believe that we'll get billions out of the US. The United States is one of the most highly protected economies.
Especially their agriculture.
Their farmers are subsidised to the hilt, and we're frankly...
And there's another aspect too, I think, Cam, in the sense that Hillary Clinton indicated, and it certainly announced here, that the United States was embarking on an export-led economy. Now that signals to New Zealand. That's her main thrust of her speech at the end of it.
That means we're going to take our
we are
imports.
being set up to being a dumping ground for United States product, along with many others, obviously.
The only problem with that is that the United States, apart from in technology, makes crap products. Yeah.
That's true. Selwyn, who wins, who loses with these new WikiLeaks revelations?
Oh, we all win. And at last, you know, the lid has been taken off. We can actually see what goes on.
Yeah.
How that impacts on the general public's confidence on these leaders, including the New Zealand government here, irrespective of who's in power, is one to be tested yet. But my gut feeling is that, as we've seen in the last 10, 15 years, that the younger generations, as they mature, are detaching or there's an estrangement between authoritative power elites, political elites, and the actual public.
Assange is the king of the Gen Xers, isn't he? He's really tapped into the anti-authoritarian.
He has, but I think it's still wrong to look at the one guy. We're looking at the whole new phenomenon now.
Who wins, who loses with the new WikiLeaks revelations?
Well, I think openness and transparency is the be-all and end-all that we've got to go through. Who loses are the secret keepers. You know, things are busted wide open, and no more can they rely on technology or laws or anything to say we're going to keep a secret here. And I think that's great. I think it's fantastic that we're doing that.
I don't think the full political ramifications of this have been borne out yet because it is Christmas time. People aren't, you know, but I think that these words are going to come back to haunt people next year.
And we must make sure they do.
Phil Goff is going to be a big loser.
Thank you, panel. Coming up, Len Brown and his anonymous donors. Is Len Brown looking after Auckland's interests or wealthy Aucklanders' interests? And why can't Auckland save any historic buildings? Citizen A is back after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Citizen A. We're reviewing the week with right-wing storm blogger Cameron Slater and editor of Scoop.co.nz, Selwyn Manning. Issue 3 this week. So Len Brown received almost $500,000 in anonymous donations. Is this the reality of politics or a behind-the-scenes way to influence favour? And TVNZ saved a heritage site like Petra Baggis. Why can't the Auckland Super City save heritage buildings as well? Cam, in the grand boulevard of democracy, anonymous donations are a prostitute's hand job in the back alley, aren't they?
Yeah, and I've always said that.
And no one knows more about prostitutes' hand jobs in the back alley than the National Party Old Boys Network. This is unacceptable, isn't it?
It's especially unacceptable from Len Brown, who just at the beginning or actually just at the end of 2009, before the election, was complaining about the limit that was set. Was saying that big business could possibly buy the election, and then he has the biggest amount of anonymous donors.
No, actually, John Banks did.
Sure, but you expected that from him, though, didn't you?
But 500,000 is a lot of money.
But again, it proves that money doesn't buy you elections.
Well, he couldn't buy John Banks an election.
It couldn't buy John Banks an election. But again, you know, I campaigned long and loud and ran billboards against the Electoral Finance Act because of the limits that we were on donations. People were saying, oh, you know, the National Party uses anonymous donations, and both David Farrer and I said, no, let's get it out in the open and see who the money people are. Full disclosure, except for ridiculously small amounts of money. You know, nobody thinks that you can buy policy for $1,000.
But you can wash all those anonymous money through the What About a Trust into a little sub amount.
Or the new Auckland Council Trust.
Great thing, isn't it? Isn't that great?
Doesn't that make it sound official?
Selwyn, in NASCAR racing, each driver has their sponsors' names written on their car. Should we extend this to politicians as well, so we can see who's actually sponsoring them?
That's
so they walk around in suits, and they've got Fonterra on it, or Mobil, or they've got an oil. You know, shouldn't we know?
And we could make a marvellous kind of theatre out of it with this multicoloured coat that they wear on
large
stage.
multicoloured coats they all walk around with, so we know who
Fisher Trust.
I absolutely support the satire aspects of what you're saying there. We are in an era, and if Len Brown and others need to learn anything from the new era, it is one of transparency, and not just an expectation of it, but a demand that transparency exists. I suspect there are a couple of things running here. One, we know the Labour Party was very much around
Yep.
the campaign of this.
Mike Williams' hands is in this.
Has the Labour Party been affected by having this particular campaign, having a lot of the funds that would naturally go to the Labour Party actually going to actually engineer an outcome that's, you know, Len Brown to win in this campaign? The other thing is that what we saw were a lot of donations that were solicited by way of the internet. Now, if those kind of pockets are where a lot of these donations have been hidden, well, then state it like the Obama campaign.
Right, yep.
You know, that so much came through from the internet-generated donations from the people. But state it.
No, but,
Don't hide away from this. If any
has...
message could be labelled, you know, sent to the town hall fellas that are looking after this, it would be
through their now
embrace the openness. If there is nothing to hide, get it out there so the people, and then work on.
Okay, next question.
Laws that change.
Both. How do I know that Len Brown is looking after my interest as an Aucklander, or looking after the interests of a construction company who may or may not have paid money into his anonymous trust? How do I know?
It can no longer be based on trust here.
Right.
They've got to be open, and they've got to be front-footing that openness, not forced into it, but actually doing it.
How do I know? How do I know that he's looking after my interests and not Stevenson's?
You can't know because Len Brown has a transparency and a truth issue. He hides things. He continues to hide things.
So did John Banks. Let's not pretend that it's just like
He's
Len
not the
Brown.
mayor.
But
he's not the mayor.
But they all in that game, don't they? Don't they?
What
they
I'm
all have that in that
absolutely.
Game. So we need to make sure that no anonymous donations can occur, right?
Except at a very small level, like under $1,000 or something like that.
It's got to be tight, like other.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. The council meeting fast last week over heritage buildings threw up a super secret deal that is so secret it had to be denied of any actual existence. And what limited support Len did give the buildings wasn't even recorded in the minutes. How can Len Brown save Auckland heritage when the Mandarins are playing him so effectively? Is this a case of the quick bureaucratic fox jumping over the lazy brown?
I think it's really showing that this is a symptom of a new mayor in a big city, and also strategically being drawn in to areas which he was not campaigning on.
Len Brown is out
common
of his
sense drives good policy. And one would suggest that he's been, he's almost an apologist for coming from a centre-left position. And he's feeling, well, I've got to appease these other areas. I think that's what's at the base. You've got to be true to yourself out there. And
is he getting played? Those Mandarins know how to do
It's
the
not
game.
just the Mandarins. I mean, the information that I'm getting is that
Which is always questionable.
Yeah, I'm pretty right on most things.
To the far right,
But right nonetheless. The information I'm getting is that on almost any issue, if it comes to a bit of a stoush and a bit of an argument, Len Brown's folding. And, and that's not a good thing to have. But then on other issues, like paying off your campaign donors and cronyism for your mates and things like that, he's not folding. He's saying, no, I'm going to keep on doing that.
You know, one of the best things he could do is actually look at the St James Regent Odeon building that's a dinosaur, an eyesore on Queen Street. Actually see whether or not the council's owed is so much rates from the former Kerridge Odeon Pacer Kerridge lot.
I'd be looking
and actually do
family.
Something about making that asset back into its glory
So
day.
He needs a crown. He needs a jewel.
He's got vision in some areas. You need vision in that, and then move into the other areas.
So why pick a project for the Liberal elite? You know, the 5,000 people in Auckland who want to watch opera and bollocks like that.
I think the political advisory areas need to be dusted over.
Sweet Jesus, it does. Okay, let's wrap the show with last words. Selwyn, your last word this week is?
Ian Rennie.
Yes.
Tony Ryle,
yes,
get out there and do something about one of the biggest breaches in public service
Maybe Judith Collins will
cabinet history in this country. It's got to be done. It's an appalling state where these two guys are actually silent on a top defence officials leaking cabinet information to a foreign power, the United States.
Amen, amen. Cam, your final word?
Echoing what Selwyn said there, the politicians have got to learn that in New Zealand, in particular, you cannot keep secrets. And it is farcical to even try and control the internet, to try and control information flows in such a way. Yes, there needs to be a serious look at information flows on how these things are getting to foreign embassies. It's not just to the Americans. Remember, we only know this because it's the American embassy cables that
right,
have been leaked. What's going to the Chinese government? You know, and you look at the influence
I think Pansy
of
Wong being taken out of the mix has probably helped in that regard.
You look at the influence that, and the WikiLeaks confirms that the absolute fear the United States has and the New Zealand government, yet they let it happen. The way they treated Bainimarama, the way they just pushed him into the arms of the Chinese, despite advice, it's in the WikiLeaks cables. I'd love to see the Chinese versions of the cables.
Thank you, Sal, and thank you, Cam. Ladies and gentlemen, my final word. ACC is being privatised by a manufacturing crisis against the advice of PricewaterhouseCoopers for the Australian insurance shark industry, who stand to make a $200 million killing. This is being dropped a week out from Christmas to avoid attention, which suggests that the 2011 privatisation agenda is no longer secret. It's out in the open, and the spin job necessary to con citizens into privatising their few remaining social assets has begun. The question is, how many New Zealanders will get conned after the truth revealed this week about the manufacturing crisis of the Hobbit, added with what has been revealed by WikiLeaks about the reality of free trade placed against the Prime Minister's medicatedly optimistic claims, plus Key's broken promise not to raise GST, one would think national stratospheric poll ratings would start to fall back to earth. To date, they defy political gravity. And next week, Citizen A is the end of year 2010 highlight 2011 prediction show special with Cameron Slater and Chris Trotter fighting it out for Alpha Dog News dominance. Don't miss it. If you like tonight's show, please join our Citizen A Facebook site and connect with other like-minded new citizens. Thanks for watching, whānau. Good night, Aotearoa.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.